And last up on the panel before we go on to Q&A, we have Darren Mills. So again, his area of specialty is estate planning, or that's one of his areas and probably the most relevant to what he's going to speak to today. So we've gone through this process of the diagnosis and building your team and, the personal stories and the planning and the palliative care and the hospice and the services. And what about one last practical piece, right? How do we plan for this? What are the long-term considerations? What are the things we really need to do? And some of it's been alluded to already, but we're now going to have some expertise to really talk more about that piece of it. So again, Darren Mills, thank you for joining us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. So my name's Darren Mills. As Cindy said, I'm a CPA and an elder law attorney. I used to do international tax until I became a caregiver. My wife and I became a caregiver for my mother, which ironically started in this building on Mother's Day many years ago. And my mother ended up being diagnosed with dementia, Parkinson's, and one thing led to another. And I woke up one day and decided I wanted to do something different with my life. And as I tell folks, right, there's no owner's manual on taking care of your kids. There's no owner's manual on taking care of your parents. So, it's sort of a experience you learn by life. So I have 6 guiding principles. I won't go through all of them in the interest of time, but one of which I'll start with, which has been talked about already today, is anybody over the age of 18, which there may be some folks in the back there that are close, but anybody over the age of 18 must, it's not an issue of should, you must have a durable power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, and a HIPAA, because any one of us could become emancipated, once you're emancipated, nobody can make a legal decision for you, including your spouse. That is a fallacy. Just because you're married doesn't mean you can make a legal decision for your spouse. But once you're emancipated, nobody can make a legal decision for you. So without those documents in place, if you lose capacity, legal capacity, there's one choice and one choice only, and that's a guardianship. They're expensive and time-consuming. So if you don't have those documents in place, I urge you to do it as soon as possible. I also urge you not to use LegalZoom, and there's many reasons why. But not to use LegalZoom, and don't use do-it-yourself. It's worth the money to see an attorney. So that's one thing. A couple things too, just on that point. New Jersey has something called a POLST, a P-O-L-S-T. That is a practitioner's order on life-sustaining treatment. I have come to find that some doctors do not even know what it is, but you must get it from your doctor. It must be signed by a doctor. New Jersey legislation, the legislators in New Jersey took the position, and rightfully so, that they want your doctors involved in end-of-life decisions. So an attorney cannot prepare that form for you. And believe it or not, the state says it has to be on green paper. Green paper. It must, I'm going to turn this way so you can hear me better. It must be on green paper. Okay, so that's one thing. So your POLST and your DNR are different than your living will. Okay, they are different. They have different purposes. So that's another issue. So that's one of my guiding principles. The other guiding principle that everybody should know is most of what we do is help people make sure you don't lose all your assets to long-term care. Okay. So it's a fallacy. Most of our clients have somewhere between $500,000 to $2 million in net worth, and we're getting them on Medicaid. Okay, it is possible. So, Medicare will not pay for long-term care. Medicaid will. Unfortunately, most people do not have long-term care insurance. So if you are still healthy, you don't have to get traditional long-term care insurance. There's other types of things out there, tools. Story for a different day, but everybody should have some form of insurance because that is always your first line of defense, okay? And for females, once you hit 65, there is an 80% probability you will need long-term care. Okay, that is a government statistic. So it's very important to know. New Jersey, so I have an office in Florida. Yep, Palm Beach Gardens. I had to fight myself to get on the plane yesterday because it was 70 and beautiful. But yeah, New Jersey ranks in the top 5 in the country for long-term care. Okay, the state also mandates that any licensed facility that has had their license for 3 years or more must allocate at least 10% of their beds to Medicaid. So if you end up, I tell folks, if you go into a Ritz-Carlton, an assisted living facility, if it's in New Jersey, they have to take Medicaid. It's by law, okay? So that's a fallacy. People think when I'm on Medicaid, I'm going to end up in some state-run dump. Well, that's a fallacy, okay? 80% of the residents in a nursing home in New Jersey are on Medicaid, okay? So that's another fallacy. Another fallacy is the state takes your money. The state doesn't take your money. Who takes your money? Any guesses? The facility, right? The assisted living, the nursing home, they're the ones that take your money, okay? Another important point, we see this all the time. First of all, it's illegal, okay? But second of all, do not hire a home health aide and pay them under the table. You are only asking for a problem with Medicaid, all right? At this point, they don't have it, believe it or not, there's no communication between Medicaid and the Division of Taxation. If they had anything between their ears, they would do it because they'd raise a whole bunch of money in a heartbeat, but they don't communicate. So Medicaid finds out all the time about people getting paid under the table, and Medicaid will treat that as a gift for purposes of eligibility, and that creates a problem. You're just compounding a problem. So that's another issue. I could talk for Medicaid for hours, but I'm sure we won't do that. And so the sort of the last thing and feel free to ask any questions or whatever, and we'll leave some. Cindy's okay. We'll put some brochures on your table. My card and everything's in there. The last thing I'll say is, most importantly, do something, right? A lot of people get concerned about putting these documents in place because they think they're signing their death wish, right? But you're not, right? When it's our time to go, it's our time to go. We can't control that. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, my wife and I, our daughter's about to be 28 and 21, and, you know, we have powers of attorney and everything over them because, again, they're emancipated. So we can't make a legal decision for them if something happens to them, right? I'm sure you all know about the whole Karen Ann Quinlan thing, and parents wanted to pull the plug, right? So, you know, doctors have a duty, a legal duty, to keep you alive, right? So that's the purpose of the Living Will, the Advance Directive, because the Supreme Court of the United States has said that you do have a fundamental right to die. That is a fundamental right in this country. Although, as you know, some states are putting legalized euthanasia on their books, we haven't done that in New Jersey yet, but it is happening in other states. Okay? Thank you.